The Eagle has landed. Rocket Tranquility, we copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery rocket, go for deploy.
Thanks to you and to everybody in the shuttle program. The crew is go for launch.
Rocket, nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us here live from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Megan Cruz with NASA Communications, and you are watching the administrator briefing for NASA's SpaceX Crew-4 mission, set to lift off tomorrow, April 27th at 3:52 a.m. Eastern Time, with 3 NASA astronauts and 1 from the European Space Agency. We have representatives from NASA and ESA to speak with you about the significance of this mission, as well as the teamwork that went into it. So let me introduce everyone here really quickly. So to the left of me, we of course have NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. We also have NASA Associate Administrator Bob Cabana, NASA Associate Administrator for Space Operations Kathy Leaders, also Heidi Parrish, Associate Program Scientist of NASA's International Space Station Program. And last but not least, Josef Aschbacher, the Director General of the European Space Agency. Thank you all for being here. Now we're going to start with some opening remarks from each of our guests, and then we'll take questions from reporters that we have here in person, but also over the phone. So Administrator, why don't you take it away?
Thank you so much, and good morning. We are really in a golden era of space exploration. We've seen the first private astronaut mission that has successfully returned. Now a 39-hour turnaround, and we're going to launch Crew-4. It's a time that, thanks to Bob Cabana, you think back in 2011 when the last space shuttle flew, which we had to shut down the space shuttle and get ready for this new era. And think how the Cape has transformed since then. Think about all of those abandoned launch pads out there on the Cape and how they are roaring back to life. And think about all of the extensive space launches that will occur, as well as all the other space activity in this area, not the least of which is building rockets and building satellites throughout. The processing of the Orion spacecraft, the very processing here of what is roaming around on the face of Mars right now, Perseverance, before it was launched. And so look what the public-private partnership has become. The cargo flights to and from the space station, the crew flights to and from the space station. Look at the commercial activity on the space station. And now all of this is getting us prepared, and later this year we're going to be launching after a half century to go back to the moon. And there, we're going to prepare, and we're going to get ready. We're going to learn. We're going to develop new things, new techniques, new systems, new technology, so that we can send humans to Mars and return safely. And so this is indeed a golden era of space exploration. I give a great deal of credit to this tremendous NASA team that we have. On behalf of Pam Melroy, our Deputy Administrator, Bob Cabana, the 3 of us are indeed privileged to offer some little leadership at this time of the golden age.
Bob, thank you so much, Administrator. Bob?
Thanks, Megan. Well, first off, it's great to be home in Florida, and it's really great to be home in Florida for a launch with this beautiful weather. I had a chance to talk with the crew yesterday morning, and they are in great spirits, and they are ready to go. I echo what the administrator said. This truly is an amazing time here on the Space Coast. What our nation's doing, this partnership we have between government and commercial operations, it's absolutely amazing. And look at the turnaround between the vehicles. This is just an awesome team. Kathy and her team in Space Ops have done an amazing job, and I look forward to the future. And as the administrator said, we are blessed to be part of this amazing team. So more good things to come. I can't wait, and I'm really looking forward to a successful launch here and getting Crew-4 up to the International Space Station. Megan?
Yeah, exciting times on the Space Coast. Kathy?
Well, like we've been talking about over the last few weeks, this takes us, we have to do this one step at a time. And I really appreciate the team doing it one step at a time. We've been carefully getting our vehicles ready and then praying for really good weather. And if you're outside and you're not getting blown over, you know that it's good launch weather. So we're very, very excited to have us setting up for this opportunity tomorrow morning. But we have to, like we were talking about this morning at the launch readiness review, we've got to do it one step at a time, making sure that we are doing it right. And I'm sure you heard that from our joint programs at the pre-launch press conference that we had earlier today. This is the time where you've got to rest and get ready to fly, and still be watching the hardware and making sure you're making the right decision. When you got a 10% probability of violation, that makes it a pretty easy launch decision for us. So now we just got to make sure that we are carefully getting our teams ready to go execute this next step. We're threading a needle a little bit on station. Station continues to operate and be a busy place even when you got vehicles coming. And so Joel talked already about the Russian EVA that we're working with tomorrow and how we're working into that. And so, like I said before, we're doing it one step at a time, and we'll be making sure that we're making the right steps going forward. I did also want to say last night as we're getting ready for the launch readiness review, we had an announcement over the system saying we're loading propellant at the C-3PF. And so we're also getting our Boeing vehicle ready to go to be coming out and for a flight in May. So it really is, to me, was just exemplified the work that this team's doing, and both teams are making progress on bringing our crewed capability back to this nation and doing it carefully, because this flying safely with crew means that you've got to do it one step at a time. And so you guys, tomorrow morning, we're hoping that you'll get to see a really, really beautiful step, and we'll get our crew safely to orbit. I also wanted to amplify the thanks. This doesn't happen without just an amazing team of SpaceX, the Axiom folks that had done their work over the last few weeks, and of course the NASA team that's executing this. Thank you. Megan.
Kathy, thank you. Yeah, it's great to see all these fruitful partnerships we've developed. Heidi.
All right. Well, good morning. It's so great to be with you today. I can tell you from an ISS research standpoint, we are super excited to get the Crew-4 vehicle launched tomorrow and to get those astronauts up on orbit. These crew members, for the next 6 months, they're going to be the eyes and the hands of a team of researchers all over the world who are studying how the microgravity environment of space and how the extreme conditions in space impact life the way we know it. And more than that, trying to translate that research into tangible benefits that impact our lives and also that help to expand our ability for future human space exploration. So the Crew-4 vehicle tomorrow is actually going to launch with some research. One of those investigations is a series of investigations, actually. It's looking at the potential to develop a a artificial human retina in the future, a process to allow us to do that. That type of technology could eventually be used to replace the damaged photoreceptor cells in the eyes and potentially restore meaningful vision to the millions of people who suffer from retinal degenerative diseases. We also have a lot of research that's already on board the space station, that's already in work. The Crew-3 crew has been working on those experiments. They're going to be handing them off to this crew. Some of those investigations include one called X-Roots that's looking at using hydroponic and aeroponic technologies to grow plants in space. This is a type of system that might be able to be better scaled up in the future for larger scale space crop production. We have a lot of technologies that are being developed and demonstrated in the exploration technology area. So these are the types of technologies that we're going to have to learn and understand and make in order to sustain us once we go beyond the low Earth orbit on a long-term basis. One of those areas is in regenerative environmental control and life support. So that's things like being able to recycle almost all of our air and water and other consumables on orbit. Very important for future space exploration. And also, the crew members themselves, when they come up on orbit, they become the test subjects. And so we're learning an incredible amount about how the human body reacts and adapts in a microgravity environment. And that's the type of research that is going to be important for future space exploration, but it also helps us on Earth to understand how our bodies change in that type of environment. So that's just a couple of the several hundred investigations that this crew is going to be part of while they're on orbit, and we're excited to get started. Megan?
Heidi, thank you. And last but not least, Josef.
No, thank you. Thank you also for being at this press briefing. It's really a privilege for the European Space Agency to be here amongst all these accomplished achievements which we have just heard from NASA. Thank you also to Bill and all your colleagues for having us in this team, because I see this really as a partnership for us at the European Space Agency with NASA, which is extremely strong. And this launch of our astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti is one symbol, together with 3 NASA astronauts, of how this partnership is growing and is intensifying. As you know, Samantha is now the 3rd astronaut in a row that is in the space station from ESA. We had Thomas Pesquet, followed by Matthias Maurer, who is still in orbit until a couple of more days, and now to be joined by Samantha Cristoforetti. And this for us is a unique period. It's the first time, or the longest time ever, that the European Space Agency has a continuous presence on the space station. Thanks also really to the good cooperation which we have with NASA, but also I'd like to thank SpaceX for very, very strong cooperation we have there. And this for us and for me in particular is also a very important sign of the reinforced strength we would like to build up in ESA, in Europe, on human exploration. This mission of Samantha and her colleagues for us is an important moment where we would like to also bring the attention of the benefits of exploration to our politicians, our ministers and our heads of government, because at the end of this year I'm putting a very solid proposal on the table for my member states to fund the next phase of space activities in ESA. As you know, we have every 3 years a ministerial conference, and this conference in November this year is setting the tone and the funding of big programs for the next couple of years. And certainly exploration will be a major topic, and the partnership with NASA is a main element of this. In fact, we will have the privilege of having Bill and his colleagues visiting our ESA member states in June this year in order to provide support also for our political decisions in November later this year. Maybe one last word. In Europe, we are reflecting at the moment on our engagement in human exploration. I have got a mandate from President Macron and all the ministers of the ESA and the EU member states to establish a high-level advisory group and really lay out options of where Europe wants to go in the next decade on human exploration. And this is very wide topic. There's a lot of reflection to be done, but certainly something that I would like to raise the profile for Europe and also being a very strong and even stronger partner to NASA and others in the world in this domain, which for me is crucial. And I'm asked to organize another space summit in November next year, 2023, where these reflections, which will be quite intense for the next year and a half, will be brought to the table for top-level decision makers to see where Europe wants to go in exploration medium to long term. But now we wish of course, all the best luck to our astronauts ready to fly tomorrow morning. I'm very excited about this launch. It's actually my first one as Director General to see the launch if it happens tomorrow morning. I was here for Matthias Maurer, but unfortunately due to the delay, I couldn't stay all the time, so I had to go back and watch it from Europe, but I'm really excited to see tomorrow the 4 astronauts, including our ESA astronaut, Samantha Cristoforetti, taking off. So thank you from my side.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, we now invite reporters here in the room and also reporters that we have on the phone to ask any questions. Again, to get to as many of you as possible, please ask one question and then also let us know who you would like to answer that question from the dais here. All right, we have one in the room here.
Hi, I'm Jim Siegel. I'm with NASA Tech, and I have a question for Heidi. I'm very intrigued about the artificial retina experiments and project. So is that box that contains that experiment, is that going up in the trunk? And how long will that experiment last? And when will it be coming back? When this capsule comes back, or is it going to be later, or what?
Yeah, great question. So first, let me start off with a little bit of background about this investigation because it is very interesting. I agree. So it's a series of 4 investigations that are currently funded. This is going to be the 3rd one out of the 4. We just got the results back from, or we just finished up the 2nd one. It occurred on SpaceX 24 earlier this year. And had some really great results. So the way this process works, they deposit layer after layer of a very thin film of light-sensing proteins, and then that process is really hard to do on the ground because you have Earth effects, which provide Earth gravity-driven sedimentation. But in space, you don't have that, right? You don't have the gravitational effects. So on the 2nd experiment that occurred a few months ago, they were able to get up to 200 layers of that thin film put together. So some great success there. A lot of work still to do. So this investigation launching on Crew-4. I don't believe it's coming back on Crew-3. I'm thinking it comes back on SpaceX 25, but I'm not for sure. But lots of great great technology there, and this is the type of investigation of research that we could see, potentially expanding for a future commercial LEO destination, for a future something like Axiom, one of the space stations in the future.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Heidi. It's always great to hear the incredible science that we can accomplish because of the ISS. And we have someone on the phone. We have Jeff Faust from Space News. Jeff.
Good morning. Question for the administrator. I know you've emphasized that space station operations have remained normal in recent months despite the geopolitical situation on the ground. But I'm curious, looking to the long term, given the continued bombastic statements by your counterpart, Dmitry Rogozin, do you have any confidence that Russia will remain part of the space station beyond 2024 and agree to an extension of the station to 2030? And what planning are you making in case Russia decides not to extend on the ISS? Thanks.
Yes, I have that confidence. And before I answer the rest of your question, I want to point out what Heidi was talking about with this incredible near zero G environment. There are all kinds of possibilities. She described this very exciting one going on with the retina. We are still, after decades, doing research on protein crystal growth. You can grow crystals in near zero G so much more pure and larger than you can on Earth. And as a result, with various mechanisms, when we bring them back, we can get the molecular structure. And if you can get the molecular structure of a protein, then you can manipulate it on whatever your research is. And so that is a very important part. And it is a part of what we think will be the replacement of the International Space Station with commercial space stations, which will then continue that kind of research and development and eventually manufacturing. Okay, now, Jeff, specifically, I have the confidence because look at the history. In the middle of the Cold War with the Soviet Union, 1975, an American spacecraft and a Soviet spacecraft rendezvoused and docked, and those crews became fast friends forever. So much so, when General Alexei Leonov, the commander of the Soviet vehicle, just passed away a couple of years ago, who gave the eulogy in Moscow? General Tom Stafford, the American commander. And I see that right now. I see the professional relationship between the Russians on board, the cosmonauts, and the astronauts. I see the friendliness between the two crews. I see that in the mission control in Moscow and also in Houston. I see that on the exchange of crews that we plan to continue of flying Russian cosmonauts on the space shuttle and American astronauts on the Soyuz. Mark Vande Hei just returned after a year in space. He came back with his crew. Who was his crew? The Soyuz. And they just landed in Kazakhstan. And so despite the horrors that we are seeing with our eyes daily on television of what's happening in Ukraine as a result of political decisions that are being made by the president of Russia, despite all of that, despite a war going on in Ukraine, I see that professional relationship with astronauts and cosmonauts and the ground teams in the two respective mission controls. I see that continuing.
Thank you, Administrator. We also have Jeff Davenport with Washington Post on the phone.
Hi, it's Chris Davenport, the Washington Post. Thanks for doing this. For Administrator Nelson and maybe Mr. Cabana, if you wouldn't mind commenting as well. Mr. Administrator, when you flew on the shuttle in 1986, a lot of people believed that NASA was going to be flying ordinary citizens on a somewhat regular basis, and the shuttle would fly dozens of times a year. Obviously, that didn't happen, but so far this year, SpaceX has launched 15 times, and while most of those are uncrewed, it's a cadence that's really unmatched in U.S. spaceflight history. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the significance of where we are now when you have a private Axiom mission followed 2 days later by a NASA mission and a company that's hitting this cadence while flying on, boosters and spacecraft that are all reused. Thanks.
And Christian, getting ready for the Boeing Starliner to fly. And it's just another means of access to space. And then don't forget Northrop Grumman, which, by the way, is a Ukrainian rocket with Russian engines that delivers cargo to the International Space Station. And having said that, let me say that since Joseph is here, our international participation is very significant to us, indeed to the world community, because here is an area, a domain, where you really see genuine international cooperation. And it's got to be right on with very few mistakes. And we're able to do that. And Joseph told you about the fact that they've had 3 astronauts from the European Space Agency. We've had Japanese astronauts, and it goes on and on and on. Okay, now, Christian, what specifically did you want me to cover?
Well, I wonder if you could just comment on the significance of where we are now and the long road that we're finally at that moment that a lot of people thought we were going to be at when you were flying.
Well, of course, I flew back in the dark ages. And we, at that point, we had visions that we were going to be able to start doing what we're doing. As a matter of fact, I felt like I owed a report to the American people as a result of my experience, and I wrote a book. And in that book, published in 1988, I envisioned, predicted the things that we're seeing today. Now, little did I know what Bob Cabana had to suffer through after the layoffs, after the space shuttle ended. Little did I envision that we could see this become a multi-use spaceport, so much so that it is now. However, I did have a dream, and that was that all those abandoned launch pads were going to come back to life. And in fact, that is occurring, more so than I even dreamed, because now we're landing them, boosters, back, sometimes 2 at a time, right on landing pads. And so I think this is going to continue. I think we're going to see an increased frequency. I want to give great credit to the Air Force, now the Space Force. I was just with General Raymond yesterday. They have done a tremendous job in realizing that what used to be just a military station is opening up to all of these different possibilities for access to space. That is truly exciting.
And Chris, as Bob, I'll just add, you know, we are finally, our vision is becoming reality. And I think it's the vision that all of us have. And when you look at science fiction and what people imagine, I truly believe if you imagine it, it can become real. And it's our goal to establish this commercial economy in low Earth orbit. And with the advent of our public-private partnerships, with the work that Kathy and her team is doing with Commercial Crew, what we have enabled, you know, is taking hold. And success breeds success. And so it's continuing to grow. Hopefully, we will have, you know, a business case that keeps this all going, where NASA is just one of many customers for what's going on. I think it's absolutely outstanding to see, you know, to everyone have the opportunity someday to be able to fly in space and see what those of us that have been blessed to see. It truly is amazing, and it changes your perspective on things here on Earth. So all the suborbital flights, more so the orbital ones, establishing these commercial space stations as we move forward, you know, this Axiom flight being a first step toward getting commercial astronauts into space, working on the International Space Station, soon to have their own module up there, and growing this economy. This is the future, and I believe it's only going to continue to grow and get better. And it's been through the partnerships that we have. It's not government space or commercial space. Our nation's space program is strong because of this interconnected relationship that we have.
Thank you both. Let's take a question in the room here. Marcia?
I'm Marcia Dunn, Associated Press for Administrator Nelson. SOS, if I might ask about that. With the extra work required, when's the earliest you can envision the flight being? Is July and August even feasible at this point? And as you all mentioned, everyone's getting used to this lightning speed by SpaceX, not just with the Falcon, but with Starship. Is that an extra burden that you bear with the slips to SLS, having the public perception of how fast SpaceX is moving on this very front? Thanks.
The answer to your first question is yes. And the answer to your second multiple questions is we need to do all of the above. This SLS is the largest rocket ever. It has the capability of putting huge payloads up into space. It is the one rocket that we have that has that capability. Will there be others in the future? I hope so. But right now, we are proceeding on, we're going to launch a test flight this year. 2 years, we're going to launch a crew to the moon. And 1 year thereafter, we're going to land on the moon with the first woman and probably the next man. And so what we have is different capabilities. We don't want to give up any one of those to the exclusion of another. And as space flight becomes more robust, we'll develop new technologies and new rockets. You can see as you look down launch pad row, there are going to be all kinds of new ones going on. 3D printed rockets. You're going to see Blue Origin down there at the tip of the Cape. This is a pretty extensive and varied time. Now, on the timing question, or anything else he wants to answer, let me flip that to Bob.
Marshall, I'll just tell you that Jim Free and his team are evaluating the options. We've got the vehicle back in the vehicle assembly building. Obviously, we're going to solve that hydrogen leak issue in the tail service mast unit. We have a valve on the interim cryopropulsion upper stage that needs to be changed out. There's some other work that needs to get done. We will complete that work, and we still have a lot to do with wet dress rehearsal. So the team is evaluating options. We'll make a decision here in the not too distant future of what the best path forward is. Once we get Crew-4 launched here and we can get the range down, get the nitrogen servicing system online, the new one at Air Liquide, and that's a 2-week downtime to bring that all up so that we're ready to go for wet dress when the time comes. There are 3 options that are being evaluated, and once we have a better technical understanding of where we are, we'll make the final decision on what the plan forward is and when we'll launch. But absolutely, August, there are options that still get us there. So the important thing now is, we got to do this right. And, you look back on slips during the shuttle program on that first shuttle flight. It's a big rocket. A lot of new equipment, new systems on the ground side and on the flight side. And this team is an amazing team. We're going to get it right, and we'll launch and get that test flight out of the way. I think it's going to be, I can't wait to see that big rocket lift off.
Let's go to a question from Irene Klotz from Aviation Week. She's on the phone. Irene, are you there?
I am. Thanks very much. Good morning. My question is for Dr. Ausbecker and also for Senator Nelson. Do you expect the Russian aggression in Ukraine to affect requests for continued ISS funding beyond 2024? And if so, how?
The answer from the U.S. standpoint is no. We will have the appropriations that we need. We have the good housekeeping seal of approval from the White House for extension of 2030. We expect so many of our international partners will be embracing this over the near future. And As a matter of fact, speaking of the international partners, look at all the people, all of the countries that are signing up on the Artemis Accords. Joseph?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Also from the side of the European Space Agency, we of course very much align our decisions to those of NASA. NASA has announced just at the end of last year a possible extension towards 2030. And within a day, I've also declared my intention to bring a decision forward to my member states to also ask for an extension of my member states until 2030. The moment of decision for us is in November at the ministerial conference, because there we put the necessary budget proposals together in order to implement or to make the decision and implement the decision. But on our side, we are nominal also to support an extension beyond 2024 up to 2030, of course, together with our partners, with NASA and the other partners of the space station.
Our next question is from Isam Ahmed on the phone.
Thank you. My question's already been asked.
Okay, great. Was there a question in the room? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Thank you for doing this. My question is for the administrator and Bob, and for Josef Aschbacher too. I want to ask about the budget. A lot of lofty goals. It's really great. It's very exciting. We just saw SLS launch and these 2 crew launches with a great cadence. But the budget last year that NASA asked for wasn't approved by the Congress. It was a little short. So I was wondering, what will you and Bob do different, better, to get that great request from President Biden to get it approved? And for Josef Aschbacher, it's kind of like the same thing. Where do you stand in Europe with getting budget requests? You mentioned Macron. I'd like to know in general, or specifically from the other leaders of the other European countries, are you getting support, and what are you doing to get it? Thanks.
May I rephrase your question? What have we already done to get the Biden administration to support? Specifically, you're talking about the human lander system, the whole Artemis program. They came in with a 23 budget. They gave us what we needed. The increase between the president's recommended 23 budget and the 22 appropriation, which was just passed about a month ago, the increase is an 8% increase. That's big compared to past NASA budgets. So it's true that a couple of years ago there was a cut when Kathy, as the deciding official on the down select on the competition, she didn't have enough money to go for more than one on the human lander system. And I said, and the Congress asked, they wanted competition. And so that has been accomplished with this budget that the president has just released. And if we get the Congress to appropriate to those levels, and I believe that we will, even in these times that it's hard to get any kind of agreement up in Washington, I believe we will, then we will proceed with what Bob Cabana and Pam and Jim Free have all outlined in detail as the way forward on having a competition for another human lander in addition to the SpaceX human lander.
And Ken, I'll just add, you know, what we need to do as an agency, and first off, what the administrator's done working with OMB and the Hill is just absolutely outstanding, the leadership he's provided us. But I will say we have to deliver also, and I think we have a plan, and we've brought this plan out at the Space Symposium. We've talked about our path forward with our international partners. It's an integrated plan. And as the administrator mentioned, our path forward on the human landing system, how we're going to proceed forward to get that competition is extremely important. But we have to deliver also. And I think having laid out this plan gives us credibility, and then delivering on the plan. And that's what I want to see from my point of view, down and in, working the technical issues that we have, is that we deliver on what we say we're going to do. And I believe that if we do that, we gain credibility with our stakeholders, and the budget's only going to grow to accomplish what it is that we're doing. So I think we've got the right team in place to make that happen. I couldn't be more pleased to be part of it. It's been an amazing year so far, and I can't wait to see us move forward and continue to have success.
Yeah, on the side of ESA and European Space Agency, and thank you for the question. I'm very carefully watching and following the budget decisions in the US, and I have to say I'm quite impressed on these increases. Bill was just mentioning the figures. I think really congratulations from my side on this ambitious plan you have. And I think it's the right thing to do, because space we are in the midst of a new space race. As Bill was saying at the beginning, we are living in a golden era, and this is really true. So what happens in Europe? I can tell you that the budget this year, 2022, is about 10% higher than last year. Of course, our budgets are a little smaller than the ones of NASA, but we are very happy and proud that we got a good increase this year compared to last year. Of course, the big budget decisions, and in Europe we have these decisions every 3 years on average through our ministerial conferences. I'm coming with a very solid package. I don't want to disclose the figure, because this is all part of negotiations now between us and our member states, but I can tell you that the figure that we are working with at the moment is very ambitious and will be another big increase compared to what we have at the moment. And this is targeting a number of areas, but certainly human exploration is one of the priorities where I would like to increase the European presence, the European capabilities, as I said before, to be a strong partner to NASA and others, and to be a strong partner to provide really essential parts to the international partnership and this cooperation. And in fact, today what we see already, the partnership we have, for example, on SLS, there is a critical element provided by Europe, the ESM, European Service Module, which deserves also a small logo under the NASA logo as a result of it. But this really is also a sign that NASA relies on us. We provide essential inputs, and we want to continue doing that. And therefore, I'm really wanting to increase the budgets also on the European side. This is all part of a wider frame. When I became DG about a year ago, I put a strategy on the table called Agenda 2025. This strategy was widely accepted by my member states, and it really says that Europe should raise its ambition in space, should raise its funding as a consequence of it, in order to really make sure that we take full stock of the benefits that are on the table in space, and especially through the commercialization that is ongoing right now. I mean, I'm here in Florida. I had the chance of visiting some of these commercial companies which are supported through the NASA commercial program. I have to say I'm very impressed, and I really would like that we learn our lessons in Europe, and we can also be a good partner in this ambition that we see worldwide in space that is happening, and I think it's very fascinating.
Ken, I'd also like to add, we're obviously focused on commercial crew today, but that budget isn't just a human spaceflight budget. It's a budget for aero and science technology across the board. When I talk about delivering, the James Webb Space Telescope has completed its alignment. And we're getting into the operational phase now, and I'm going to go visit the Space Telescope Institute next week and talk to the team. And that is just an amazing telescope. I've got to see the picture of the star, the one star that they picked out with nothing else around it to align those mirrors. And they just completed the final mirror alignment last week. And if you, even just looking at it on your phone, all you see is that star. But if you spread it out with your fingers, there are galaxies behind that star that have never been seen before. And that's going to be absolutely amazing. And I know he always talks about it, so I got a chance to say something about James Webb.
I'm still like a kid. The two of us were here on Christmas morning. Because of COVID, we couldn't go down to French Guiana. And so the two of us were here, and we were like two little kids on Christmas morning with the success of that launch.
Perfect. We have our last couple of questions on the phone. Let's start with David Curley first.
Thank you, David Curley from the Discovery Channel. Mr. Oshbacher, you mentioned the new space race. Can you talk a little bit about pulling out of the lunar missions with the Russians and pulling back from the Chinese? And Administrator Nelson, can you discuss the national security ramifications of the Chinese and Russian cooperation? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I start on your first question, so thank you. So what happened, and this was widely reported, is of course as a consequence of the war in Ukraine, the member states of ESA have put significant sanctions on Russia and Russian industry. And of course the geopolitical situation did not allow us to continue with the ExoMars program, which of course has been a highlight, or is a highlight of our activities where we have been working with Russia for more than a decade. Of course this is painful. The decision that was made, as you know, was to suspend the launch of the Rosalind Franklin rover, which was ready to go to Mars. If you imagine all the engineers working on this for more than a decade, the scientists waiting for the data to come, because the drill of the Rosalind Franklin rover would allow to drill into the Mars surface about 2 meters and really take a probe from underneath in search for life on Mars. And this, of course, is very exciting. And the decision had to be made that we suspend this launch, and therefore the cooperation with Russia. Also on Lunar 25, 26, 27, recently we have decided to suspend this cooperation. So this is a consequence of the current geopolitical crisis. It is, of course, something that has an impact, and this is part of the decisions I'm preparing with my member states for November this year. What I want to get out of this crisis is really to make sure that we build up a robust space industry and space infrastructure, robust in the sense that we are hedging our missions and our activities against this type of thing. One element I really would like to mention is, this is concerning the future of ExoMars in particular. Of course, we now need to look for other options. One option being that we do it purely European, another option being to do it together with other partners like NASA. And I really would like to acknowledge the support NASA gives us in studies we are doing now on the way forward, what the different options are. And I think NASA was very forthcoming right after the invasion to offer help, advice as much as it can be given. Of course, we have to decide then, and this decision I expect to be taken by July by my member states, how we proceed. But I really would like to take this opportunity here, also sitting here in NASA, to say that we've been very impressed with the technical expertise, the advice that was given to us and is given to us on the way forward for ExoMars. And really thank you, Bill, and your colleagues, tremendous support and tremendous partnership. And I think that shows once more that in crisis situations and when things are getting difficult, the partners are sticking together. As we say, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And I have to say NASA is a friend in need, sorry, I'm the friend in need. And this really has been just tremendous, and really thank you for the support, but also reaching out in these relatively difficult times for us in Europe, dealing with the consequences of this geopolitical crisis.
You must understand the difficulty of Joseph's position. He has to be Merlin the magician to keep 28 member states all herded up and all headed in the same direction. And so my hat's off to you, Joseph. for your ability to do that. And indeed, that relationship between us and ESA is solid and it's unbreakable. Now, your question is about Russia and China. I've already, at great length, already described the situation that despite war on the ground, despite the horrors of what we're seeing, that in fact, on civilian space since 1975 in the Soviet Union, we have always had cooperation, and the proof's in the pudding over those decades and decades. It doesn't mean that sometimes our partners do things that we don't like in space, such as the Russian military launching an ASAT and blowing up pieces that are in the sphere that indeed the space station was threatened, which, by the way, not only have astronauts, it has cosmonauts on it. So I was very clear about my attitude about that. As I was clear in 2007 about the Chinese ASAT test, which even put more pieces of junk and debris up in low Earth orbit that would threaten various assets, including the space station. So now, specifically with China, we simply have not been able to get any kind of transparency from the Chinese space program. So they had the first stage of their rocket that put up their space station, and it's coming back to Earth, and they didn't reserve enough fuel to have a controlled reentry, and thank the good Lord, it came down in the Indian Ocean, but it could have come down in Europe, it could have come down in Saudi Arabia, it could have come down in Greece. And oh, by the way, they were not transparent. They wouldn't tell us about the tracks, so we were making our own calculations about the tracks. We want cooperation with the Chinese, but it takes two to tango. And there has been no forthcoming from the Chinese government about that cooperation. And so we will deal with it as it progresses.
Okay, and that'll wrap up today's news conference. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks to those who asked questions as well as to those who participated from the dais here. Again, launch is targeted for tomorrow, April 27th at 3:52 a.m. Eastern Time from Launch Complex 39A, and our coverage here on NASA TV will begin at midnight. So we'll see you then.